I'm your host, Dan Carrigan, and on VADA Live, we're tackling one of the most pressing issues for Virginia's franchise dealers, warranty reimbursement. The topic affects dealers, technicians, and even customers, and we'll explore the current challenges, legislative solutions, and expert insights from industry leaders. Well, joining me today, we have three guests on VADA Live. We have Anne Gambardella, who is General Counsel and Executive Vice President of VADA. Welcome, Anne. Will help guide us through this issue here at home and VADA's proposed legislation aimed at addressing these challenges. I'm also joined by Jordan Jankowski, Chief Operating Officer at Armatus Dealer Uplift. Hello, Jordan, and Ryan Hammer, Director of Operations at Armatus Dealer Uplift as well. And they're bringing expertise in navigating warranty reimbursement processes across the nation. Wow, everybody, this is a great topic to jump into. I want to mention as well, Armatus is an endorsed VADA program partner. Welcome to VADA Live, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate you taking time. And let's start with the current legal state. Before we get into the legislation, what is the state of warranty recall reimbursement for Virginia's franchise dealers today? And really, why is this change necessary and what we'll be talking about here today?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Well, we have a statute in Virginia, just like many other states, but we've had a statute in Virginia that says that dealers are entitled to be compensated at their retail amounts for warranty and recall work. That statute has been here since I got here 26 years ago. So it has always been the case that dealers have been entitled to retail reimbursement under Virginia code. Now, that is a great thing to say in a code book, but as we all know, the manufacturers can chip away at that, and they do consistently. This is probably the code section that I have worked on the most over my many, many years at the General Assembly. We've changed it. The last time we changed it was 3 years ago. So we are looking again to make some tweaks to the things that manufacturers try to do to push down the costs of warranty and recall repairs onto dealers. And what we tell legislators is that, you're talking about a product quality problem. This is the manufacturer's product quality problem, be it a recall or a warranty repair. And so the dealers shouldn't be footing the bill for this in any regard. Our code is very clear on that. We understand that, in the day-to-day, it's awfully hard to fight every battle all day long with your business partner, but that's where we try to create a system in the franchise law that at least gives the dealers the opportunity to make their case when they want to. And that case is that you have to pay me what my retail customers pay me, full stop. That's what it says. So that's really why we are constantly trying to amend this section, is that we just see manufacturers chipping away at it, be it, recall parts pricing or rental cars or any number of ways. And that's sort of that is what this particular piece of legislation deals with.
Thank you, Anne, for really level setting this conversation. Jordan, Ryan, turning to you. Can you tell us just a little bit about the mission of Armatus and why your company was started, what the landscape looks like nationwide for warranty and recall reimbursement for dealers? Talking local, let's expand it out a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. And Armatus started 13 years ago. My father was a dealer for 22 years. In 2009, the downturn, Chrysler and General Motors took our franchises, and so we started consulting with dealers, and we were using the experience that we had in the dealerships to try to find areas where we could bring value to dealerships where there was frustration, and warranty was a huge area. 13 years ago, there was only 31 states that had a mandate for retail reimbursement, including Virginia, as Ann said. And at that time, though, not many dealers were taking advantage of those state laws. Why? The manufacturers made it almost impossible to get approved unless you wanted to litigate the issue, which no one really wants to litigate an issue like this with their manufacturer. So we dug in and said, the state laws are clear. How do we mechanically work on fixing this problem for the dealers? So with a mixture of technology and people and process, we chipped away at these submissions. We reverse engineered the games that the manufacturer played to the best of our abilities, and we started getting approvals. And so fast forward to today, 13 years later, the legislation has gone overwhelmingly in favor of the dealers because, as Ann said, all we're asking is that you pay us fair market rate reimbursement for warranty work. 49 states now have a law in place that mandates retail reimbursement, and we've worked with over 7,200 dealers nationwide and helped them get 18,000 total approvals. So things are overwhelmingly going in favor of the dealers in this area. But as Ann said, there's some games being played today that are causing a lot of franchise laws to be updated, just like Virginia, to try to protect the dealers further from the manufacturer's latest behaviors.
And this is a question I'll ask for this group maybe 3 times throughout this segment. Why is this issue become so urgent right now? Really hinted to that, but really to put a fine point on that, particularly for dealers and technicians about the now. Why is this really such an urgent issue?
Yeah, Dan, certainly it's a hot topic that's echoed nationally right now. And technicians they're directly impacted by the inadequate warranty and recall compensation. These jobs often pay much less than your customer pay work. And so, you have this imbalance, and it can definitely lead to frustration, right? Lower morale with the technicians that drags across the service department. And then really in turn to higher turnover among those skilled technicians. So when we speak to dealers, we're often told that the struggle to retain top talent when these technicians are feeling undervalued or underpaid for the work that they're performing is a big problem. And so ensuring that dealers are comped fair reimbursement for their warranty work not only improves the dealership profitability, but also helps maintain competitive pay rates, positive work environment, and it's really critical for attracting new talent and retaining their current employees.
And maybe a question for the full group next. Examples are welcome here. Those real world challenges for dealers facing trying to receive this fair compensation for warranty and recall work. How does this affect their operations? Really, what is the real world challenge that may be encountered here?
I'll take that one, Dan.
Thanks, sir.
It's just some very practical challenges. So in warranty, there's time reimbursement, how many hours the manufacturers are willing to pay, and there's rate reimbursement. And state law certainly mandates, as Ann mentioned, an amount. So you would argue the amount should be both sides of that equation. But again, in terms of practicality, it's very difficult for a dealer to get reimbursed fairly on the hours to time part of the equation. And so the manufacturers, it might take 2 hours for us to replace a water pump for customer pay, and it does take us 2 hours to do that job, but the manufacturers will only reimburse us 1 hour. Huge area of frustration for the dealers, impacts people's pay plans. In some cases, the dealers are subsidizing that, and so there's just a lot of frustration there. On the retail rate, what's happening is, there's really, with this reasonableness language, the reason that this is a big goal for Virginia and other states is that certain manufacturers are, for lack of a better term, controlling market pricing. So they're knocking down every submission with no justification to bring lower rates to then compare other dealers to those lower rates. And so it's a lot of, imagine a dealership could do this process, and it might take them, depending on who's doing it, 30, 60, 90 days. And then the manufacturer in 1 hour responds to you with a reduction. Happens with one manufacturer every time, and it comes back reduced. So you go through a process, thousands of repair orders, you take the time away from your staff to do the work, and at the end of the day, the manufacturer's never intended to pay you fairly in the first place. So those are kind of both sides of the frustration and the real world challenges dealers see in Virginia and many other states.
And turning to Virginia, Ann, may you walk us through VADA's proposed legislation? And I understand determination of that retail compensation is one of the leading, most pressing issues here. Yeah,
again, our statute requires that dealers receive the same amount for a warranty repair that they receive from a retail repair. But as Jordan laid out, it's not just it is math, but it's sort of hard to explain to either the DMV commissioner who would be looking at this, to a legislator who's considering the statute, or to a circuit court judge if you're appealing an agency determination. So it's a difficult thing to sort of to play out. Like I said, it's easy to put it on paper, harder to implement it in practice. So our statute right now says that the amounts that a dealer charges that are determined through that 100 repair order review are presumed to be reasonable unless the manufacturer can show that the amounts are not reasonable. And that was an interim step that we put in several years ago to try to address some of these complaints about, just the manufacturers just outright just denying dealers their increases that are determined through that repair order process solely because some other dealer somewhere is cheaper than them. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So we did that as an interim step. We've now come back to the General Assembly and said, see, this is exactly what we told you was going to happen. We tried to take out reasonable before. We agreed that we would take this interim step. The manufacturers are routinely abusing it. So now we're just going to say, no, you do 100 repair orders. That's the math. That's your rate. There's a number of other states that do it. Virginia dealers should have that same right. We're also addressing a couple of other very, technical issues. We try to not have broad sweeping legislation. We try to be very, very surgical and address real life problems. For instance, a number of years ago, we put in a statute that says if a manufacturer promises a dealer that they are going to, or promises a customer rather, or requires a dealer to provide a rental vehicle to a customer whose vehicle is being repaired under recall or warranty, then that manufacturer has to pay for that rental car. Shock, right? It's part of the warranty cost. We all know dealers are not getting reimbursed, or they're not getting reimbursed at all sometimes, or they're not getting reimbursed at what they actually spend to rent the vehicle, or they're saying if you didn't rent them an SUV or you didn't rent them X line make, we're not paying for it. So we're making a couple of tweaks. One related to them just not wanting to pay, saying that if you don't rent the size or the line make, if you can't rent that in the open market, then the manufacturer still has to pay for it. There's a manufacturer out there that puts on their Monroney stickers, on their window stickers, that their warranty includes that rental car. So they've promised it to the customer, and the dealer shouldn't have to pay for that. But the second thing we're seeing is that some of these repairs are taking a really long time. Either they're hard to diagnose, which goes to another part of the bill I'll talk about in a second, or the parts are not available. So you have people in rental cars for weeks, months, even longer sometimes, which is crazy to me to think about. But so what we've also done in that statute is say, no, you got to pay dealers every 30 days for those rentals. They don't have to wait 8 months till the warranty claim is submitted to get reimbursed for the car they've been paying for the customer, paying enterprise for a rental for 8 months. So it's more of a cash flow issue. So that is, again, a tweak that we see based on the length of the repairs we're seeing. We also are going to address diagnostic time. We think technicians should be fully reimbursed for the time they spend diagnosing a vehicle. We'll put some language in there that makes that clear. I call these kind of bills the "yeah, we really mean it" bills. It's like we said it the first time, but you didn't quite understand it, so let me say it again. And so that's what we're doing with diagnostic time, making clear that they've got to pay for the time spent by the technician, interacting with the manufacturer to try to figure out what's wrong with the vehicle. And then lastly, we're looking at parts pricing. We're calling it parts pricing manipulation. The issue with recall parts we see often where the manufacturer, changes the parts price because they know they're going to have to do a recall or a recall-like repair, and that cuts into the dealer's, amount that they're earning on that job. So we've put in language that says it's the part price is the highest price over the last 12 months. So that'll help that. And that also that those parts are returnable so that dealers don't end up with a lot of obsolete parts that they can't do anything with. So those are sort of the moving, parts of the bill, no pun intended. And we'll see where it ends up in the process we're working through as we speak. And all of those things we feel like will put real money back into the pockets of dealers and their service departments and their employees in those service departments. And so that's sort of where we are right now.
And appreciate that download and that update. And Jordan, Ryan, just from your experience, how do manufacturers typically approach warranty reimbursement submissions, and what are the key differences between the factory statutory processes that dealers need to understand?
Yeah, so, kind of as mentioned both by Anne and Jordan, the landscape has changed 15 years ago, fast forwarding to today in 2024, now with 49 states with retail franchise laws. And Every manufacturer, though, has its own protocol for the retail warranty reimbursement submissions, and typically they're less favorable for dealers. While the goal of the law is to provide the dealer fair market reimbursement, the manufacturer, of course, wants to do everything they can not to pay that amount. When you talk about factory labor submissions, they're fully 100% controlled by the manufacturer. So it gives them the upper hand. And while you're talking about statutory submission, it's governed by your state law, right, which are designed to help the dealers achieve fair market rates. And so when you submit under the state law, you often have greater protection. It allows the dealers to exclude certain non-warranty like repairs, how to handle if a manufacturer is attempting to reduce the retail rate that you're entitled to. And also submitting under the state law 9 times out of 10 is going to yield a higher reimbursement rate than it would under your factory protocol.
Yeah, Dan, sometimes we say that the factory protocol is easy by design.
Right.
Fill out a survey, give us 30 qualified repair orders, less work than what you would do under state law. But in most cases, those easier processes are going to lead to an automatic lower rate than you're entitled to based on what the market rate is. That's governed by state law.
Right.
And Anne, when you were speaking about just the bill, I know VADA working closely with legislative partners on the effort. Anybody you'd like to recognize as part of that, maybe perhaps an update and some names and partners dealers will see as you and the team communicate more about this bill and communications?
Yeah, I'd certainly like to recognize the patrons of the bill. In the House, we have Delegate Brianna Sewell. She's from the Prince William area, Democrat, someone that we've started working with. We always look for, as Don says, champions for our bills. Somebody that's not just carrying it because we've been helpful to them in the past or hope we'll be helpful to them in the future. These are really people who sort of get in there and really understand and are passionate about these issues. And then also on the Senate side, also from Prince William, Senator Jeremy McPike. He in fact carried the bill in 2022 that put in this sort of interim step for what is considered reasonable. So he's going in and being able to say, look, this was my legislation 3 years ago. The original draft we had back then is exactly what we need now because what we tried to compromise on is not working. So the two of them are really, leading this effort and spurring on our efforts at the General Assembly, and are both very strong supporters of their hometown dealers, and lots of support from the committee members themselves. So we'll talk a lot more about that in our legislative updates.
And Jordan and Ryan, just from a broader perspective and to really put drill down a point on this, how is Virginia's current framework comparing to really what you have seen and are seeing in other states?
Yeah, so Virginia's got a similar framework to the 49 states that mandate retail reimbursement. So no two state laws are alike, obviously. Legislatures are different. As Anne's mentioned, sometimes we go in with one goal, compromise, and end up with another, and then have to come back. That's what a lot of states are doing right now. We tried to play it fair. It didn't work. Now we're having to button up the language. But Virginia's law is right in line within what you submit to achieve retail reimbursement. And if we were able to successfully get the reasonableness language out, there's 14 other states that no longer have that, and more coming because this problem is so prevalent. So that will give the Virginia dealers a huge leg up on where we are today, and also on a lot of other states where that frustration, that suppression of retail rate is happening without justification. So it'd be a great win here for the dealers, and it would really help, as we've talked about it, the broader issue is solving, the technician shortage, the unfair payments, those kinds of things. So that's really how Virginia stacks up against the other laws around the country.
And it really dovetails well into this next question related to just common hurdles and misunderstandings. What have you seen that really prevent dealerships from an overall holistic perspective from really maximizing warranty and reimbursement?
I'll jump in first just to say one thing I always tell dealers is make sure that the manufacturer knows that you know your rights. So our statutory scheme says, you get paid your retail amounts. They can't ding you for little, undotted I's and uncrossed T's. They can't, all the little games they try to play along those lines. But what our statute also says is that if a dealer goes to DMV and complains about a warranty, normally it's chargeback situation, complains about a chargeback because the manufacturer says, no, we are not going to pay you for that. They can, if they prevail in that hearing at DMV, and most of the time they have the law on their side. The manufacturer says, we're going to charge you back because you didn't have the customer sign the RO. We're going to charge you back because you didn't put this word in the right place on the form. None of those are reasons to deny a claim. So if the dealer prevails at DMV, the manufacturer knows that they may have to pay the dealer's legal fees. So they can do math. And so the more that a manufacturer or that a dealer knows what their rights are, and then more than that, make sure the manufacturer knows that they know what their rights are. That certainly, I think, leads to a better outcome. I'll rely on Jordan and Ryan to give you the ins and outs and the nitty gritty, but that's just been my observation over a couple of decades now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just further, it's the understanding and complying with the retail law, Virginia or elsewhere, it can be really challenging. And for a dealer who may have submitted under the factory protocol for years, trying to understand what the law is saying, what protection they have, and how to proceed can certainly be a hurdle. And, as Jordan mentioned, every franchise law are different, right? No two states are the same. And so when you have dealers operating in multiple states, they have to navigate, right, the different regulations, and whether that be from a timing perspective, when they're eligible to submit, what the formula is, or the stated sample in the statute, right? What's excluded, what needs to be included. And as I mentioned a minute ago, manufacturers often impose very strict rules that need to be followed on their end that might not be stated in the statute. And so a lot of them aren't actually written in black and white. They're not in the P&P. And so if you don't know those things, that can be a big hurdle for you when you're trying to increase your rate. And so we've seen, as a result of some of those things that I just mentioned, dealers delaying the submission or even foregoing submitting for an increase altogether, maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in a row, or even settling for lower rates. And so I think when you talk about some of the misunderstandings of not maybe understanding what the law actually says, or what hurdles are unknown, right? You don't know what you don't know on the other side when you're submitting that package. A few questions that might make sense to ask are, do you have a process in place to submit for your increase the very first day you're eligible annually? Have you checked ahead of time that you've done what you need to do in your service department to get through the process and have a viable opportunity to submit on that first day you're eligible? And do you know if you're submitting for the highest rate that you're entitled to?
And I'm curious for the group, perhaps without naming names, is there an individual dealer perspective you can share, almost a real world example of how a dealer turned things around and improved warranty reimbursement outcomes?
Yeah, Dan, actually, it was just last year. We worked with a very large dealer group in Virginia for the first time. And for years, they completed their own submissions in-house. They built out their own process. It was working. But when we kind of had a couple conversations, they wanted to know, are we leaving anything on the table? Are we getting everything that we're entitled to under the statute? And so we partnered together, and within a matter of 9 or 10 days, we submitted for all of their stores. 23 submissions ended up being approved for them, ultimately worth over $850,000 for their bottom line.
Wow. And for dealers who want to start making those improvements right away, perhaps hearing that number, Ryan, and that may be absolutely enticing, what is perhaps that place to start? What is something that's practical that really could take a little time just to prepare for a retail warranty submission? What can they do? What are those little things perhaps?
So Dan, I'll take that one. So and that was an annual figure, by the way. So that money's coming every year to them. And ultimately, some dealers, just like that dealer, are going to have an opportunity because they have been following a process, but it's not necessarily the process that's going to get them to their true retail rate. A few things, just quick, what you can do to prepare is have your anniversary date marked off on your calendar. So many times dealers, if they're eligible to submit, for instance, in February of this year, they should be submitting because every day that lapses beyond that date is lost profit that they can't recover. So I'd say get organized around the process. It's obviously not a dealer's main focus, But too many times we even hear people working with vendors where they're doing it on their own schedule. And what's best for the dealer is to submit on that day that they're eligible to help maximize profit. The other thing would be to make sure that you're doing the process timely. So this process should take anywhere from a week to 30 days at the most. And we've heard dealers working at it for months or vendors working at it for months. And so again, all of that time is profit you can't get back. So I would say really if it's too big of a task in-house or you're working with someone it's taking them 60 or 90 days, really look at that process and understand, okay, how can we speed this up without sacrificing quality? Because you have to put something in front of the manufacturers that they're going to approve. So it should be done in a week, but it should be done in a week, nearly perfectly. And then the last piece, which might be the most important, is you have 6 months of data to go back to submit. So you're going to submit 100 consecutive qualifying customer pay repair orders in the last 6 months. And what is the most advantageous set to submit to the manufacturer? So, if you've got a situation where a dealer, it's winter time and we did a ton of battery repairs, and that's not your typical retail customer, and those should be part of routine maintenance operations anyway, but the manufacturer wants to pile them into the calculation. That's not indicative of your actual retail pricing for repair work. So pick the set that makes the most sense. That's going to get you your true retail rate for the next 12 months.
And Anne, next steps for VADA in advancing this legislation at time of recording, and is there anything dealers can do to stay informed and engaged as things move forward?
Yeah, I think that we're going about the steps we go with every General Assembly session. We're talking to the relevant committee members. It'll go through the process. It'll get voted on about 1 million times, and then it'll go to the governor. It's like Schoolhouse Rock, right? That's how laws get made. For dealers, we do have our dealer day at the Capitol on the 29th, Wednesday the 29th. Bring in for lunch and take you to the Capitol in the afternoon. We always make sure our dealers know that we'll guide you around. We're not just going to expect you to go lobby and know how to do all that. So we'll take care of you on that. And then we do send out weekly updates as well, so you can keep apprised of that. And then I think within even just yesterday, we sent out an alert asking dealers and their technicians to submit letters, and we have pre-written text. So it's really a simple matter of putting in your address, selecting the text that you want, adding your own comments should you feel inclined to do so, and hitting send, and it'll send it to your senator and your delegate. So we really hope dealers will take advantage of that action alert and do that. And I'll rely on Dan and his partner Jeff to make sure that information is included somehow on this podcast and through whatever technology magic there is, so that if you're watching this, you'll be able to easily access that.
And as far as communications, how we support VADA, and I always welcome a civic session. So thank you for that refresher. That is great going into and being mid-General Assembly session. And working to really wrap things up, Jordan and Ryan, just from your work in the field, is there one key piece just of advice for any dealers navigating this? What's really your elevator speech for them, and maybe that one topic they can take away?
Dan, I would just encourage dealers to, so we're going to submit this submission, and you're typically going to get some number for a parts and labor reimbursement. But you ultimately don't always know if that's a good number or not. So I'd say always have the work checked. Whether you're going to retain a professional or not, have someone look at the work and make sure that you're submitting for your true retail rate. Again, if you miss the mark at all on parts or labor, it's money that you can't recoup. It's money that the dealerships and the service department need. So if you're doing it in-house, if you're using a vendor, have someone check that work to make sure that what's being done for you is helping you achieve your true rates and is what's best in service of your dealership.
Thank you. I appreciate this panel for joining us. Appreciate you for joining us for this edition of VADA Live. Again, a big shout out and thank you to Anne Gambardella, Jordan Jankowski, and Ryan Hammer for sharing their insights. Of course, warranty reimbursement is a key issue for dealers, and today's conversation really highlights those challenges and steps being taken to address them. Thank you again for watching VADA Live. I'm Dan Carrigan. See you next time.